Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. Judy here. If you fight for freedom, democracy, and human rights, you've come to the right place. I upload weekly to this series which talks about dictators and more. Before we dive into today's topic, please allow me to thank the friends who bought me coffee from my website last week. Thank you so much for your kind support, my friends. Thank you. Last week, I mentioned the Irish potato famine when I talked about Greenland. If you've watched that video, my friends, you know it's known as the Great Famine. And you know what, my friends? The Ukrainian famine, the Holodomor, is also referred to as the Great Famine that took place in Ukraine between 1932 and 1933, which was part of a Soviet famine. Ukraine was one of the largest grain-producing states in the Soviet Union, so the famine hit Ukraine particularly hard, which resulted in widespread death. At the height of the famine in 1933, Ukrainians were dying at a rate of 28,000 people per day. You might wonder how this could happen. Millions of people died of starvation. Most historians who have studied this period in Ukrainian history have concluded that the famine was deliberate and linked to a broader Soviet policy to subjugate the Ukrainian people. Why? Well, you know, my friends, at that time, the Soviet Union was ruled by the dictator Joseph Stalin. If you recall, I've talked about them many times in my previous videos. If you haven't watched those videos, please check them out in the description and comment. And as I always say, dictators, no matter which type they belong, they are not good for the country, the economy, and the people. So no doubt, Stalin was not an exception. In 1928, Stalin decreed the collectivization policies of agriculture, which demanded farmers to surrender their land, livestock, and farming tools to the Soviet government, working on the state-owned collective farms as laborers. No, Stalin didn't need to use tariffs to make farmers go bankrupt in order to help wealthy people or the government to get their farms. He just directly forced the farmers to give their farms to his government. The majority of the rural Ukrainians who were independent small-scale or subsistence farmers resisted the collectivization. But the Soviet secret police and the Red Army ruthlessly suppressed their protests. Yes, you can consider their secret police as Stalin's personal army. Like you can consider the ICE agents as Trump's personal army. The difference is Stalin's secret police didn't even need to wear masks. They arrested, shot, or deported tens of thousands of farmers for participating in anti-Soviet activities labor camps. Yeah, at that time, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. After the First World War, Ukraine did declare itself the independent Ukrainian People's Republic in 1918. Unfortunately, it lost its fight for independence after 3 years of fighting. The bulk of Ukrainian territory was forcibly incorporated into the Soviet Union. So when the famine happened in 1932, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. Yet the Stalin regime declared the famine in Ukraine to be a non-existent phenomenon and refused the assistance offered by numerous non-governmental organizations. News of the famine was deliberately silenced by the regime. Western journalists based in Moscow were instructed not to write about it. A young freelancer wrote about it, and then he was murdered in 1935. Right, there's no free speech in a dictatorship. All journalists have to praise the dictator and their policies. If one dares to criticize the dictator, one will be put in jail or be killed. So there was no free speech in Stalin's dictatorship. And in 1932, the Stalin government took a series of decisions that widened and deepened the famine in Ukraine, like peasants were forbidden to leave Ukraine in search of food. In the same year, while the Ukrainians were dying, the Stalin administration extracted 4.27 million tons of grain from Ukraine, enough to feed at least 12 million people for an entire year. To escape death by starvation, Ukrainians ate anything that was edible, like grass. The Soviet Union, Russia treated Ukrainians so bad back then. If the Kremlin seizes Ukraine again, this kind of thing would happen again. So much so, we must stop Trump. Don't let him force Ukraine to give away its territory. Trump and Putin must be stopped. Okay, my friends, in case you don't know me yet, I'm Judy Faye London, a fan of Jack London. I'm a published writer who writes fiction and non-fiction novels and short stories. You're very welcome to visit my website, judyfaylondon.com, or Amazon to read my poems and my short stories. The last one, Mr. Rat, Candy the Dog, and so on, and my latest non-fiction book, Living with the Walking Dead, a roadmap for achieving your own success. I hope to see you there, and I thank you so much for your kind support, and thank you very much for subscribing to my YouTube channels, Judy Faye London and Judy Plus. Judy Faye London is a channel that mainly talks about culture, economics, and dictators and various events and people in human history, while Judy Plus is a channel that talks about interesting discoveries in the world of science.